Welcome to CPF Fire Wire, a podcast from California professional firefighters where we discuss a wide range of issues affecting firefighters, our unions, our families, and the communities we serve.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CPF Fire Wire. I'm Brian Rice, president of the California Professional Firefighters. This July marks the one-year anniversary of the devastating fire aboard the U.S.S. Bonhomme Richard in San Diego. The Richard's an amphibious assault ship that was docked in San Diego for maintenance and refitting when the fire occurred deep in a storage locker. The fire burned for 4 days, resulted in 61 injuries that included both civilian and Navy firefighting personnel. The firefight itself was difficult. Firefighters were forced to navigate narrow smoke-filled corridors. But beyond the injuries and the damage, the fire exposed the firefighters to just a haze of toxic substances that were released during the fire. Federal Fire San Diego was the first in on the fire, and many other agencies participated alongside dozens of Navy firefighters. Federal Firefighters Local F33 has been at the forefront of working to get the Department of Defense to come clean about the nature of the exposures so they can protect their members. Joining us to talk about the fire and those efforts is Ian Piccolo, the president of Federal Firefighters San Diego, Local F33. Ian, welcome to the Fire Wire.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having us. Appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us.
This will actually be, we're here for a couple of reasons, but definitely it's our first kind of operational podcast and the after effects. Ian, tell me a little bit about yourself, how long you've been with Federal Fire and F33 and how you got involved in the union.
Yeah, for sure. I actually started out with Forest Service over here in Ramona, California. I started in 2008 with them. In 2009, I was hired on to actually as a volunteer with San Diego County Fire Authority, who was under contracts with CAL FIRE to provide rural fire services. In 2010, I got hired with the feds. I spent 4 years down in El Centro aboard Naval Air Facility, El Centro, the Blue Angels winter home. There, I started in the union as a secretary treasurer. It just happened to be that nobody really wanted the job. So I took it upon myself to join up. I was motivated, and I really didn't know much about the union. And so I started learning. I transferred over to San Diego in 2014. I became a steward in 2014 with F33. We had a vacated vice president spot. So the board elected me vice president. And then when Masoni left, I was elected president of F33, and that's 2020.
A lot of us don't really, we understand the fire protection on federal and military installations, but what we don't understand are kind of the protecting the assets, whether they're airplanes or in this case, ships and submarines. But can you tell us a little bit, like as an F-33 member and you protect the shipyards in San Diego, what's that all about? What at any one time, what kind of ships can you find in port, and what on a typical day when you look out, what kind of exposure do you see?
Besides the obvious, we're all risk agency. We respond to structure fires, EMS calls, any type of call within the base. And we have our mutual aid partner, San Diego City. They border many of our bases here, along with National City and Chula Vista and Imperial Beach. So we have bases all along the San Diego coast there, from the border up until Point Loma. We do crash fire rescue as well. So we do take care of the aircraft when they take the wire or any in-flight emergency. We're there. And then as far as the ships are concerned, we have quite a large array of ship. Almost any ship that you can think of that the military has on the Navy side gets docked at 32nd Street. Typically, we are not a place that major repairs and major overhaul and maintenance take place. We're not a shipyard. We're not classified as a shipyard. So there's more inherent risk and dangers when you have that sort of stuff going on base. And we're just not set up to handle that. So they are looking at reclassifying Naval Base 32nd Street. Hopefully they do. But as far as the ships are concerned, we are not their primary firefighting force. The ships are fully self-contained. Everybody on the ship is a firefighter. So when we get these type of calls, we're there as support. And in the case of the Bonhomme Richard, that overwhelmed the ship's forces very, very quickly. And we became the primary, along with all our mutual aid partners and everybody that responded there. As far as what you can find on the ship, it's not a lot of common combustibles. There's not a lot of stuff that can burn on the ship. Besides the hydrocarbons, the JP5, you have all the fuel that they use. And then there's a lot of hazardous materials on the ship. So they usually have a hazardous material representative there that we can talk to, and primarily little oil grease fires is what you'll find that we respond to.
What, like the Bonhomme Richard, what kind of a ship is it? How big is it? How many personnel when it goes to sea? How many personnel are on it to operate it? And kind of what's its primary mission?
Yeah, so it's a LHD. It's a WASP class amphibious assault, primarily for helicopters to land and troop carriers in the docks. So it's forward operations within the seas when it's just too long of a stretch for aircraft to make it. The aircraft land, refuel, reservice. They get whatever they need, and they can carry and launch from there to go wherever the mission is. So I think we have 8 of them in the fleet. The Bonhomme Richard, I don't know how many people it actually carries when it's operational. I'm sure it's into the thousands. It supports Marine Expeditionary Forces. So it can have a wide range of people on the ship when it's doing its operations. Like I said, I think we have 8 of them, and the Bonhomme Richard was in docks preparing to accommodate the F-35, the new Joint Strike Fighter. It wasn't set up to do this. It wasn't its main mission or intention, but I think as a cost savings plan, the military selected the Bonhomme Richard to do double duty and accommodate the new Joint Strike Fighter.
The maintenance or the stuff that was going on, it was a little bit more than just regular maintenance. There was some kind of retrofitting and things done. How many naval firefighters were actually or are actually present when a ship's in that status? Like, how many firefighters would be assigned by the Navy to protect that ship?
We don't know exactly how many people that they require for that to happen. Usually this type of stuff happens in dry dock where they fully remove the boat from the water. It usually happens at a shipyard. And so fire and things never happen when you want them to happen, right? So the ship on a Sunday, they have lower amounts of crew and staff available. Everybody's out enjoying their Saturday, Sundays off. So already they were shorted personnel. And being that large of a ship, just such a wide area to cover. You have maybe 60 people on the boat. They all have their assigned areas, people providing fire watch, but you also have the contractors and the folks doing work on the boat as well. So with that, it was a perfect storm. Sunday, low crew. Our people were down because of the Navy. Navy takes operational risk management and shorts us positions as a cost savings, so they don't have to pay overtime. So if you look at,
isn't it funny how efficiency and cost savings always equals less staff and higher risk for firefighters? Kind of a follow-up on all that. So you're there. It's a Sunday. Most of the sailors are working their liberty. There's a skeleton crew. You all were on duty. Tell me, the call comes in. How did it come in? What were your thoughts during response? And then what was your initial size up upon arrival? What were you faced with?
Just around 8:30 Sunday morning, call came in for ship fire Pier 2. The first arriving crew, which is Station 16, is on 32nd Street. They have 2 engines and an ALS box. Typically, you would find 4 firefighters assigned to each, apparatus, and 2 on the box. We're dual role, so all of our ambulances carry our firefighting gear. We have SCBAs, so we can respond as well. So your first engine had 2 people on it, a captain and a relief driver. And the second engine had its full complement, and then we had 2 on the box. So you're already down 2 people first arriving. The captain went up to the quarterdeck. Typically, we meet the ship's crew there.
Okay, so let's hold on. What's the quarterdeck and how do we get there? I mean, assuming once they were on the quarterdeck, you're on board the ship.
Yeah, so they go meet the crew on the quarterdeck. Basically, you take the ramp, if you're looking at a cruise liner or whatever, you get the ramp up and then you're on the boat. So the initial outlay from the photos, I think they're all floating online, but you could see that there was definitely something that you were going to have to work at. There was smoke pouring from quite a few spots in the vessel. And then as soon as the captain made contact with the ship's crew, they obviously asked for our assistance, and then they had to game plan on where the fire was. So it was a lot of smoke, a lot of heat, but not a lot of flame. Like I said, there's not a lot to burn. However, in this particular instance, the fire and the reports aren't completely out yet, so it's still under investigation. So I will say that. But where the fire was possibly started in the storage vehicle ramp area, that deck of the ship, it's a few decks down, and it's this huge, massive, just open area to store vehicles and huge storage area. And trying to find and navigate a proper path to the fire. I was just speaking with one of the firefighters that was pulling hose through there, and one of the first ones to kind of set up firefighting operations. They kept running out of hose trying to find the fire. They were 600 feet deep of hose, and they were having to pop hose packs, and we have breakaway nozzles just for this very instance. Breakaway, put another 100 foot, put another 200 foot, and still trying to find the fire. So there was just a lot of smoke in the beginning, not too much. You couldn't see any flames, and just a lot of smoke and heat. And the quarter deck, which is right off of the, if you picture the side of a boat where you can see right into the boat, and it's kind of open air area, and then you start walking into little spaces. That's what we're talking about right there. And that was tenable. There was not a lot of smoke there. It was okay. You were off air and you were talking to these people.
When you were saying that some of the members were laying in about 600 feet of hose, and what kind of conditions were they encountering in that big space? Was it smoky, warm smoke, hot smoke, drive them to their knees? Were they upright? Was the visibility, hand in front of the face, or a little bit better than that?
Yeah. So for several hundred feet, they could see where they were going. They were pushing through. As far as the smoke was concerned, as closer they got to the lower V, it was getting hotter. If you really think about it, this whole ship is metal, and then heat transfer. So not a lot of times if you're walking down into the ship, you're going to want to be on your knees. But the way that the ship was and the contractors working on there, usually you can, start shutting down compartments inside the ship, shutting down breezeways, kind of solidify and trap the fire where we can. There was cabling running through all these hatches, so you couldn't shut the door, the hatches. There was metal. There was a bunch of just contractor stuff, materials all over the ship. So they were having a hard time navigating around some of that stuff. And then they couldn't use any of the door control methods that we would typically use. But it was definitely hot. It was smoky. As the closer they got to the lower V, which they knew the fire was there, they just didn't have a complete good route to get there.
You see, you've used this term a couple times, lower V.
Just the lower vehicle storage deck area.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. That's where the fire was reported to have started, and that's that big storage area that they were talking about. So when they were making their way down there, yeah, of course, it was getting much more intense as far as heat is concerned, and much more smoky.
I know you guys had to go a long ways in. Did you, as we all kind of think about it, but it's hard if you aren't in there or you don't have experience with it, it's very hard to get a picture in your mind. Were you guys operating on a deck level that was below the water line or close to it? I guess what I would say was, how many stories, we look at the deck and it's like, how many floors below that did you guys have to penetrate into?
If you're talking about the zero deck of the ship, like where you would walk onto and where the aircraft go, it was about 3 or 4 below there. So at the water line, no, it wasn't at the water line at all. It was still above the water line. So as far as those cooling, like the water, dissipating the heat through the metal, it wasn't any of that. It was still above that, quite a few. I think the ship has 14 decks in the scheme of things, if you want to look at it like a high rise, 14 levels. So yeah, it was just a few decks below, but there was scaffolding there, and there was stuff was just getting so hot that the non-skid that goes on, that adheres to the metal, was melting, and it was getting gummy. So it was just hot all over.
So as you guys got in there closer, in the kind of the smoke conditions, I'm going to make an assumption that most of the smoke coming out of there was probably pretty thick and black.
Yeah. And who knew what was burning? At the time, we didn't know really what was burning, but there was scaffolding down there. And as far as the investigation is concerned, I don't know this to be 100% true, but they had put all their firefighting gear down there in the storage area. And so I think that a large majority of their gear was on fire too. So there was just a bunch of stuff down there that was smoking and giving off toxic fumes and whatnot. Yeah. So
during, if I recall correctly, there were a couple of explosions during the course of the firefight. And I think the first day, kind of walk us through a little bit of that. In, were they close calls? Were the men and women out of that area when they happened, or did they find themselves in the middle of it?
The first explosion, I think, happened a couple hours after the start of the fire. They had not made their way to what you would call the seat of the fire yet. They hadn't found, the conditions of the flames and stuff like that. The explosion was most likely happened in that vehicle storage area, or the storage decks that they had down there. And from what one of the firefighters was telling me is that he heard reports that it was a JP5 housing line for like jet fuel that exploded. The even though that ship was being retrofit and upgraded, it still had all the fuel on board. So I think they had 1 million gallons of fuel that they were running off of, that they could run off of. I don't know why they didn't take it out, but the fuel is kept under the water line, so that wasn't too big of a concern for anybody. As far as when the explosion happened, as far as I can tell, and from accounts of it, that nobody was inside performing interior firefighting operations. Most of them were regrouping and coming back and on the gangway to go to the ship and whatnot. The explosion happened, pretty big explosion, knocked a couple of people back. I heard a couple of reports, like Daryl Roberts got blown back. Quite a few of our guys got blown back. And then there was a call made, hey, everybody off the ship that was in and around it. we're going to pull back and regroup. And firefighting didn't commence for quite a while after that, because they were trying to figure out what was going on and what was actually making those explosions happen, and then what we could do to mitigate that.
While everybody was regrouping, did it look like the fire was worsening, or is it just kind of holding in place?
Yeah, I can't speculate on that one. I don't actually know, but smoke continued to pour out from there. So it had already advanced past this stage of where we could contain it. Now it was just pushing it back where we could start shutting down things and kind of getting a hold of it. And it's not like a lot of stuff was on fire. Yes, it's so many passageways of just smoke and heat trapped. Because then again, it's just a big metal box.
Yeah, it's like all the principles that we use to evacuate superheated smoke and gases. It's like they don't apply.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nowhere. I mean, you're not cutting a hole in the deck. You're not cutting a hole in the side. All the things that we would normally use, you can't do it. Ian, so you guys were there for days, if I have my facts right, and so exposure wise, let's just talk about the exposure. You go to the incident, you probably work, how many hours I'm assuming some people worked 18 to 24 hours on that thing before they were released. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. One of the hardest things that we were talking about, there's so many things to learn from this fire for us, because you're not attacking it like a normal structure fire or a vehicle fire. It did burn from Sunday to, I think, Wednesday night is when they finally got a hold of it and called it like, hey, we got extinguishment, but now we got to still evacuate the smoke and get the hot spots done. So it was still smoking days after. But one of those things that we kind of have to look at it like is this large scale incident, like almost a brush fire. The operational periods weren't set up initially. We just didn't have that capacity or capability or forethought to, hey, we need to start people on 12-hour shifts. And number one, we didn't have that many people. San Diego City showed up and they were there for about 4 hours. But after that, I believe their chiefs made the call to pull their guys out because of the explosions and what was going on. So that's just something that we have to push through and kind of work with our mutual aid partners to make sure that we're on the same page and they have the training like we do. Obviously, the Navy, we are the Navy insurance policy. So pulling our guys out and stopping attacking the fire wasn't going to happen for us. But the operational periods, some people were exposed to more than 12 hours, 14 hours, 24 hours, and then went back the next day to re-engage. And it's not like the water dissipates or goes other places while it's in there. So all these places are watertight, so you're walking through. Yeah.
I know that men and women were operating there for long hours. Did you guys, did you have any kind of immediate physical effects like flu-like symptoms, headaches, nausea? Did you have stuff that you picked up off of that, that long-term intense exposure? We
had several members with shortness of breath, chest pain, kind of stuff like that, flu-like symptoms after, difficulty breathing. During we had a couple injuries. They were dealt with. Quite a few people were, it was hot. Quite a few people with heat exhaustion. They were pulled out, rehab, IVs, and they were like, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm going to go back in. So they went back in. But yeah, it was right in the middle of this pandemic too. So we don't have our own regulators. We're sharing SCBA bottles and regulators. We have our own masks. We have occupational health on base. That's who deals with our people typically. But since it was flu-like symptoms, shortness of breath, cough, they didn't want to see our people because it was, the COVID stuff. So then they were referring us outside to our primary care, physicians. And our primary care was like, this is a occupational problem. You need to go to your occupational portion of the. So it was just
you guys got kind of run around.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the days to come, were you able to identify any of the specific toxins, or are you in the process of that yet? How forthcoming has the Navy and the Department of Defense been with you guys? Are they pretty open and honest? This is a type of paint we use. It contains the following, substances, or do you have to battle just to find out what was in this ship? What are they telling you?
Yeah, they haven't told us much. I haven't reached out above our leadership as far as information is concerned. You yourself, Mike Fay, Charlie Martinez, you guys reached out pretty early on. We got on that conference call very early on, and I really appreciate that. So that kind of pushed us into dealing with the IAFF, and Jim Johnson helped out. He sent us over to Raquel Siegel, I think it was, the IAFF occupational health person. They got us in touch with Virginia Weaver and some doctors from Johns Hopkins Research. And so with all your efforts, with our efforts here at F-33, we drafted a letter. I did have to do some things. There wasn't any air monitoring during the initial firefighting operations. San Diego County does collect air samples from around the county, just, periodically. They did get access to place one near where we were here at Pier 2. And they also have one pretty close offsite to the base. So I collected all that data. I sent that over. One of our guys who does help with the Navy school here for the sailors has access to the manual that the military has. And then they have a list of common, toxic materials that you'll find on the ships. So all of that got sent over to Johns Hopkins. They drafted a letter for our members. It's not totally encapsulating. It's not like a end all be all for our members, but we do have, a letter. Hey, you were on this fire. This is what you were probably exposed to. And this is verifiably what you were exposed to in the air, probably at higher concentrations, just inherent to firefighting. And then, so every member has that letter, and they can take that and put that in their jacket as far as their health medical record. Tying all of that in, it's we talk about presumptive laws and stuff like that. As far as federal firefighters, we don't have any presumption. However, we do have that cancer registry that the IFF has been pushing. Greg Russell and the IFF have been pushing for a presumptive. I think that's on the docket right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Personal exposure reporting, Ian, are all your guys members of PER, and have they filled out personal exposure reports? And here's the other part of this. Even a year later, they can do it retroactively. We will make sure that a staff person at CPF is available to help. If anybody forgot, I meant to, any of that, get them in touch with Charlie, and let's make sure that happens, because that's going to be very important to you guys. And I also think along with that is the behavioral health component of it too. It's kind of one of those sentinel incidents. And, if you're battling your way in and you're 800 feet in on the end of a nozzle, and your bell goes off, that there's just things that happen that are going to be sentinel to you and your well-being, and give you those thoughts. All those things need to be recorded and not taken for granted. So I'm off my high horse. Ian, as we talk about the exposures and the toxins and so much of the unknowns, and unfortunately there's incidents like this that you learn things as you go along. And one of the things that struck me just sitting here talking to you that, I want to talk about in the future, that we have something set up that we can get our members blood tested immediately. If it's right off the incident. I wish I would have thought of that while it was going on, but it really, there's so many toxins in there we don't know about, but an initial blood work could have been very, very helpful. Our eye is on that.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. Strong work by CPF and IFF. We have that paid for now. We get blood tested for PFAS and PFOA. So that's in there. And so now all of the federal firefighters have that available when we do our yearly physicals. It is something that you have to ask for, but all of our members here at F33 know when they go do their yearly physical, ask for the blood draw. It's expensive, but it's authorized through Congress, and we got that done. So now we can at least take baseline vitals on that. And then also it could have come at a better time just before this fire to see how those levels were affected. But the fact that we have it and then just draw another correlation between job-related cancer.
Is there anything more that the IAFF and the CPF could be doing to be supportive of the members in this arena, that one, we don't know of, or two, that we can just help you push the ball forward?
I think the only things that we have left to do as far as our part is to, hit the legislative aspect again at Congress and just tout our issues and make sure they go through.
Obviously keep us in tune on that, because I just think for the next couple of years, there's going to be things that pop up health-wise, the things that we didn't know that we couldn't possibly know. If we need to, push some buttons with the Department of the Navy or the DOD, keep the IFF and the CPF in the loop between everybody. Somebody knows somebody that we can help make that happen. One of the other ones for you guys, how is your PPE? I'm going to make an assumption that your PPE is the same standard that any municipality in California has going into it, but then after it's done, how did you guys do with contamination, replacement, cleaning? How did that process go for you guys? And are you happy with it, or are there things that we can help push on your end? As
far as the PPE is concerned, I would say the department has done a pretty good job of making sure that we have the PPE. It is the same standards. It's just the structural firefighting ensemble, according to the NFPA. Previous to that, we did have a push for 2 sets of turnouts per member. So we had that, but not every member had 2 sets. So what they did during the incident is they opened up the warehouse. They found sets, just inherent to the federal side of things. We have quite a few transient firefighters. You could work anywhere in the world with the feds. So we can transfer out and go to a couple years in Spain or Greece. So it's hard to build the ensembles for the actual specific person and then have 2 sets, because it's just a huge cost burden, but they do it in, regardless. But we kind of had to mix and match, like, hey, does this fit you? This is what your code is. This is from a different, this wasn't exactly designed for you, but it has the same measurements. So we did that during the incident. The only other thing I could think of is washing the turnouts after an operational period if we're on this large scale incident. That's the only thing I could think of that would aid us in this, because we were pretty well set up. We have contracts with a cleaning contract, and those were done right after, and we were in our brand new second sets, and then they sent those off to get cleaned and inspected. You kind of hit on this a little bit, and I don't think we can't talk about it enough. In Sacramento and through my career, we've always, my local has always included federal members if they want to come with us. Mike Massoni's gone a couple of times. We've had a couple other members. Talk to all of the membership of CPF on how important it would be to have a presumption nationwide
that would cover federal firefighters, and then just how important it is to be not just how important it is to be in the 5th District and a member of the CPF, but how we can work together when we go to DC to lobby on behalf of not only municipalities, but our federal brother and sisters. What does that mean, and what can we accomplish, Ian?
Yeah, I think United Front, how many people we have in the international, how many people we have in CPF, and just everybody coming through those doors and talking to the representatives and backing that up. It has to mean something. And we've done pretty well, obviously, for legislative. You guys have done pretty well, really well in California. Obviously, we have presumptive laws in California. With the federal presumption, I know it's going to be a big push. It's going to cost a lot of money, but we have members with cancer who have had cancer, died of cancer, and it would just mean so much. Actually, we have this letter from the IAFF. Hey, these are all the hazards, risks that you guys, partook in the fire on the ship, and then couple that with presumptive. Hey, I was on this ship fire. I got this type of cancer, and then you're taken care of. It would be huge.
We'll use this as kind of a standing up point for the presumptive on a national level. We'll make sure that we communicate with all of our locals to hit their congressional and Senate representatives in California and work pushing our brothers and sisters in Arizona, New Mexico, Hawaii, but anybody around us, the importance of this. Ian, I want to thank you today for joining us and for all that you and local F-33 members are doing, and all that the leadership of F-33 is doing to protect your members. It does not go unnoticed. Please keep us posted on your efforts and what's going on and what we can do as a CPF, both at a state and national level, to keep the pressure on. That's all I have for today. Again, Ian, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the Firewire. And until next time, everybody in the field, be careful. And I know that we'll talk to you soon. I'm Brian Rice, and we're signing off.
You can find CPF Firewire at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you find podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. You can also find CPF Firewire at the CPF website, www.cpf.org, and on the CPF YouTube page. We're always interested in getting your feedback, comments, and criticism. Tell us what you'd like to hear about. Drop us a line, info@cpf.org. CPF Firewire is a production of California Professional Firefighters. Our producer is Carol Wills. Our engineer is Matt McDermott. Please join us next month for another edition of CPF Firewire.